Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Watchdog podcast, where we talk about Big Ten basketball and hoops. I'm Graham Dynas, alongside my co-host Taylor Seamer.
Graham and I here are two high school friends who big from Illinois, so we have Big Ten roots there. Graham and I big basketball guys as well. We watch college basketball pretty much religiously. Graham goes to Illinois there. I go to Michigan. So the rivalry is growing as we speak. You can imagine that this causes some interesting conversations between us. So we thought we'd start this podcast up and see what happens.
Absolutely. Well worth it. This has been in the works for like almost a year now, maybe longer than a year. We've been wanting to get this rolling over the break between semesters. We finally, I feel like, started gaining some steam on Twitter, and so now we're starting phase 2 here with the podcast. And
I feel like it's been probably about closer to 18 months, I'd say, because we were talking about this 2 falls ago when we got on campus. So
finally here
it is. This is the culmination of everything we've been looking for.
Yep, you guys are in for a treat. I'll just say that. Let's get started. First segment we're just going to break down some headlines from across the week in the Big Ten. And the first one we got all the way back on Monday, we got it titled The Edey Problem. Everyone saw it. It was going ballistic on Twitter with the hook and hold play that occurred in the Purdue win over Michigan State on Martin Luther King Day. That wasn't even sent to review and was called a foul on Mady Sissoko from Michigan State. Questionable officiating, especially with the lack of review. What are your thoughts on that play in the game, Taylor?
In the Big Ten, you're going to get questionable officiating all the time. It's kind of just a well-known fact at this point. Even at home, you don't always get the favorable whistle. As for the play itself, as a big man in the past, I can sympathize with this man getting mauled on his rebound. Okay,
Absolutely.
Hit this man being Zach Edey. I don't think Zach Edey had a problem. It was probably by definition a hook and hold, but in my opinion, Zach Edey had gone up and had the ball right here. The guy's arm was under him. He's just, if it's like when you go to basketball practice and your coach is yelling at you, you gotta fight through, keep it at your chin there. I don't know how. I mean, that's got to be on Sissoko for putting his arm in there. That's what I got. That's what I think.
We're already getting into it. This is where I disagree. Mady Sissoko. At the point where Mady Sissoko was going for that rebound, he was in the air jumping for the ball. His hand was up at the same time that Edey was. Edey's taller, obviously. That's his key advantage.
But I would say you got to box him out. Sissoko's got to box Edey out if he wants the position for that ball.
Yeah, but he's jumping up. He has the right to the ball as well. Edey gets to it first, and then I feel like it gets like caught here underneath Edey's arm, and then the difference. I don't think that's a foul yet. I don't think there should have been a foul on Sissoko. Maybe if you get like the reach after, maybe like for keeping it up there, but he's entitled to the ball. And then the foul, the hook and hold, it was definitely a hook and hold. Whenever he catches his arm and he rips and turns 180 degrees, I feel like that's textbook.
Having played basketball with the Graham Dynas himself, I think Graham is very what's the word, guilty of the same move. And I don't know if you have much room to talk.
I'm undersized. I got to take advantage of what I can get.
And Sissoko is too, and he got called. That's what happened.
The fact that it didn't go to review, especially.
Yeah, I would say it should have been looked at, because they look at. I mean, if a big guy breathes on somebody inside the paint and they fall over, they're looking at it. It feels like, especially in the Big Ten.
Regardless of if they're going to overturn it or not.
Yeah,
it has to be looked at.
It should have been looked at. And then if they came back and said there was nothing, people would have been less mad, I think. But I don't know. The officiating in the Big Ten is always questionable. And reviews are magnitudes above that. Flagrants, hook and holds, fights off the bench, anything it's always questionable.
Yeah. So that brings us to another question is, do you think that Zach Edey is being officiated differently than the other big guys in the Big Ten?
If anybody says no to this question, I think they're just not watching Big Ten basketball enough. I mean, he's just so much different than everybody else in the league that if you officiated him the same way, you would have, I mean, guys would be playing 3-on-5 at the end of the night because everybody else is fouled out on the bench. And he would be sitting on the bench halfway through the first half because he's just so much taller than everybody else. He puts his arms up and you're going to hit him.
Like the way I'm getting at it, is Zach Edey, like Zach Edey this year has been tremendous at staying out of foul trouble is what I like. I feel like Edey doesn't foul, which that's Purdue, that's Matt Painter, that's, strong, that's good coaching, and Edey's a very coachable guy. That being said, I don't know if he's had, I don't think he's fouled out this year. Maybe he has.
I don't know if he's fouled out this year. He might have once.
He's never in foul trouble, and he seems to get away with, not like get away with, but I feel like he's being officiated to where the refs are trying to keep him in the game as long as possible.
Yeah, and I think part of that goes with his reputation. They're like, they're saying Edey's a National Player of the Year candidate.
You don't want him
especially a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate, no doubt. And they don't want, and that's really how the entire Purdue offense works. They throw it in. If he can't score, he throws it back out because everybody quadruple teams him and they shoot him. So if that guy's not on the floor, Purdue it's a different offense. Purdue has to run, and I don't think they want a National Player of the Year and especially a Big Ten Player of the Year sitting on the bench for every game, because then he wouldn't be in the conversation, wouldn't be as exciting for the conference.
Which that brings me to another point, which being an Illinois fan and maybe a little biased, but I sat here last year and watched Kofi Coburn pick up 2 fouls often. He was getting mugged in the paint and they weren't calling it, compared to, I feel like Edey's getting to the line way more often. And I was looking at it by percentage, and I believe the stat said like Kofi was going to the free throw line on like 7.3% of his shot attempts, and Edey was at like 7 flat. So Kofi's going to the line more, but then again, I feel like Kofi is drawing more contact. I feel like if you compare the ratios, I sat there and watched Kofi get mugged and it be no calls, and Edey's getting called, I feel like a regular big.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a style difference. Kofi was 100% embraced the bully ball aspect of just I'm just going to go hit you through the chest as many times as possible, which makes there be more contact. And then if the official's blowing his whistle every single play, the game is going to be 5 hours long instead of 2 hours long. Edey is much more finesse. He does have a bullying side to his game, but a lot of it is more of catch, turn, and quick hooks, which don't necessarily involve as much, backing down through guys that cause problems. But
it's interesting, and that brings me to the final point that I have on this discussion is the Big Ten has been for years now officiating differently in the regular season and their tournament than the NCAA.
Oh, I have, yes, no doubt about that.
So how is that change in officiating that's going to come in late March and potentially early April? How is that going to affect this Purdue team? Is Edey going to be sitting on the bench early? Our team's going to get away with more? Our team's going to get away with less?
I think Big Ten officiating as a whole is different than the entire rest of the league. The entire rest of the NCAA, much more strict. The Big Ten has this reputation for being a bully league, and they let a lot of contact go by, especially down low and in the mid-range. Up top, they're a little I think they're even a little quick on the whistle up top, especially when they're in that corner up at the half-court line, waiting for an offense to start. Hands calls there are a little much, but in general, I think the Big Ten officiating is much looser than any other conference or independent gets. And I think that with that being the case, guys in the Big Ten get used to it. They're way more handsy, and then they can't turn it off when they need to go play in March. And I think that causes everybody problems. So with that being said, Purdue is included in everybody. So I would say, Purdue is going to have to either adjust or, find a way to keep the same Big Ten officials, which doesn't really happen.
In the tournament,
you can't really do that. So you have at most one guy from your conference on every game. So
knowing Matt Painter's the guy that's able to make adjustments. He's arguably the best coach in the Big Ten. You've got him and Izzo are probably the two best. But yeah, I mean, if any team's going to be able to do it, I think it's Purdue. They were the team from the conference that got the farthest last year. This team seems to be maybe not better because I feel like we're dealing with a lot of the same talent and they're missing Ivy and Trevion, but it seems to be built more soundly as well.
Yeah. Back to the Painter point, he is the greatest coach probably in the Big Ten in January and February in conference play. He struggles in March, so I don't know what his adjustment is going to be. There's that infamous picture of the one singular Final Four banner hanging in Mackey that goes around every March once Purdue loses because they're expected to go so far and they never do. So we'll have to see. I don't know about that. That's Painter. He needs to make some adjustments for March, not for the conference.
That's and another not so hot take here going back is that, you know, obviously the Big Ten has been a league. We have a reputation now where teams aren't getting past the first weekend very often. Like Michigan they've been the team that's been able to go the furthest, but outside of Michigan, there's not been any sort of consistency getting past that first weekend. And I think that has a lot to do with the officiating.
I think it is the officiating. Yes,
I think that's almost like the main reason why. And the way that the teams are built in the Big Ten as well is different. I feel like if you're going to win in March, you need to have NBA level guards and forwards, and your offense can't be built around the inside. And that's why this Purdue team scares me, because in March, teams with good guards and forwards have been the teams that have had the most success recently. So I'm curious to see how it goes. This Purdue team could buck that trend. They're very good.
Yeah, but then again, we saw that last year too, and same thing happened. So you just have to wait and see, I guess. But I don't know. I don't. Yeah, trusting Purdue / Big Ten teams in general in March is just hard because playing in the conference and playing outside the conference are very different, and especially in tournament play when officials are watching everything, they want to get everything exactly right because if you get something wrong and a team loses because of that, then their entire season's done. Over. So it's a tough adjustment, but I thought Big Ten coaches would be able to adjust because they're some of the best in the country. I don't know of a conference that has as many superstars on the sideline as guys in the Big Ten, but alas, it hasn't been the case. It's been, Houston's and Villanovas that have done things.
Absolutely. And I hate the argument that the Big Ten doesn't win in March. Why do they get so many teams in March? The Big Ten every year is just such a strong and deep league. Obviously, there are 9, 10, 11 teams in the conference that are in the best 48 or however many, at large plus power conference bids.
I think that's obvious. I think even the eighth place, the 7th, 8th place team in the Big Ten, right in the middle, is much better than any, second or third bid from the Big East, from the SWAC, the MEAC, all these conferences. I mean,
do not throw the Big East and then list up the SWAC and the MEAC. The Big East is a good conference.
Okay, then the Mountain West, they're better than teams from the Mountain West. They're better than teams from the Pac-12. The 7 team in the Big Ten could finish 3rd in the Pac-12 every year.
If you don't want to let in that Big Ten team, who are you letting in?
That's my point. That's my point.
And I love mid-majors. We're Missouri Valley boys as well. And
hey, Dogs is here, coming back.
Go Dogs. That being said, I do not need to see 2 Valley teams this year compared to, if we need 10 or 11 Big Ten teams, be my guest. I would rather watch the better team play whenever there's a championship on the line. Okay, let's go to the next point, which is the Northwestern postponement due to COVID and injuries. Little breakdown on this. I believe it was, I don't know if they announced this. I think they announced this on Tuesday, that their Wednesday game against Iowa was being canceled due to being shorthanded. I think they had 6 players.
Yeah, I think the report was six guys. Yeah.
And then this morning on Friday, it was also announced that their game tomorrow against Wisconsin is canceled or postponed.
Postponed is the word they're using, but it most likely is canceled which I'm sure we'll get into here. But
here's a point that I have to make about this is, do you remember that game? Was that 3 or 4 years ago now? Probably more than that. The Alabama-Minnesota game where there was the technical
Yes.
fouls, whole bench got ejected, and
Mhm.
then 2 guys fouled out or got
They were
hurt.
playing 5-on-4, I
And
think, at the end of the
it was
game.
5-on-3.
Five on
It was
three.
5-on-3. Alabama,
Mhm.
Colin Sexton in Alabama, there were 3 guys on the court.
They
And
still won that game.
no, they were losing big, and they came back. Like, they cut the 3 would beat the
Yeah.
5 whenever they were on the court.
Yeah.
But Minnesota still ended up winning the game. That being said, I don't understand what this rule is that 6 players isn't enough. That's a point that I like.
I get it. I don't know how many of them were scholarship. I think the report I saw just said 6 players total. And if you're playing, I mean, guys you picked up at the intramural league last season because you saw they were good and you had 2 spots left to fill the 13-man roster or 15, whatever it is. Playing against guys who are going to go first round, second round
Chris
NBA.
Murray. Yeah.
I mean, is the game worth playing at that point? I don't know.
See,
That's my way.
Is the game worth playing is the question, which the Big Ten protocol called, I believe at the beginning of the season, they made a rule that was if a team has to forfeit due to COVID, it's a forfeit.
Yeah, it is. But I think they get the option to try and fit it into the schedule to reschedule it first.
Which brings us to another point where I haven't seen anything from Wisconsin today. I haven't checked, but Iowa fans were livid on Twitter. They were absolutely furious that they were not getting a forfeit win. And
yeah, I can't blame them because I mean you take every win you can in the Big Ten, and I mean when a good for Northwestern especially, but even
a bubble
above average
tournament team.
Yeah, Northwestern team is coming into town. You take those wins when you can get them.
I understand. Like I'm going both ways on this because I'd like to see the game played, obviously, but I don't want to see Iowa and Wisconsin schedules get ruined because of they're throwing in a 4th game in 10 days in March right before.
Yeah, no. I think there has to be a pretty much open spot on the schedule for both guys where they have like a stretch of probably 4 days off where they can pick one of the days. So they have 2 days off on one of the sides to recover from their games. But yeah, I would like to see it played, but it can't be forced into the schedule. That would cause rest issues, health issues, I mean, other things like that. You don't want to be worn out heading into March. I'd rather play it within the next 2 weeks if possible.
If you
to
get
it
as soon
fitted.
as possible.
Because you want the best your team can be in March, and Wisconsin and Iowa shouldn't be forced to be tired heading into the Big Ten tournament or the NCAA tournament just because Northwestern had a problem. So I think that's
all 3 of them are. I mean, not more than likely. I would think that there's a good chance that 3 of them, all 3 are going to be playing in the tournament. So
yeah, I would think so.
Northwestern is the one that I'm questioning, and Wisconsin is their fringe. I think Wisconsin has put enough on paper as of now to where they're pretty firmly in. But that being said,
I think they're much better with Wall back
that's true.
than they are.
I think
they were for that. What was he out 4 or 5 games or something?
Yeah, it was a tough stretch.
Yeah, and they won what 1 or 2 of those out of 5 or something.
It was a rough stretch. Either way, I also just think it was funny, just people in Iowa Twitter going being livid and just like people saying that this forfeit win isn't helping their tournament resume. It felt like a lot of weeping, and this isn't anything about all Iowa fans, but there's a select few that
I didn't see much from the Iowa side. Personally, I saw a lot from the Michigan side that was just like, what even is the rule? Because we thought we had a rule,
exactly,
and then now they're postponing. So like, and we had just played Northwestern. That was our game just before then. So the Michigan was very worried about what that would mean for our schedule. And so far, nothing has popped, but those things have to be considered too. If Northwestern was playing that game and they knew some guys were not feeling their best, what does that mean? Then it messes up not only Northwestern, Iowa, and Wisconsin schedule, then it's Michigan and every team that they have to play schedule.
Yeah.
And then the whole league has an issue.
Yeah. Here's a question that I have for you. I'd say we go to 2 of the more progressive campuses in the conference. Do you guys still test for COVID?
No, we don't.
No, we don't
I mean, You can if you like feel symptoms, but you don't have to. No.
So that's what other people bring up is like, why is Northwestern still testing for COVID?
Yeah.
You know, which I mean, I get it. Obviously, we don't want people getting sick, of course, but I don't know. It's a weird issue. I thought we were past this, and it keeps popping up. So
I haven't heard of any other team this year postponing
I
any
don't
high
think
major team, at least postponing for a COVID reason, except for
not
Northwestern. So.
at least not power 5, power 6
Yeah.
in conference play. I
Yeah.
believe I've heard like there were a couple, and I don't even know if they
Well,
it may have been
like
weather related. There's been some
Wisconsin,
cancellation.
Wisconsin had their game with Grambling canceled over Christmas break, but I don't know. They never gave a reason. They just said the game wouldn't be played. I don't know if there was a weather issue
That's
or a
odd.
health issue or something, but
Either way, it's interesting. I'm curious to see how the Big Ten reacts if there's a spot in the schedules and it's a big issue now because now you have to fit it into 3-team schedules instead of just 2. Northwestern has to fit
if
2
it
extra
was
games.
if it was just Northwestern Iowa, then you could probably find a day. But trying to schedule 3 guys and one of those teams is to play 2 of the games,
it's going to make
What-
for a brutal stretch for Northwestern.
what they might do,
and
and this isn't necessarily ideal. What they might do is wait till the end of the year and see if that matters for
standings.
for
Yeah.
for double bye, single bye.
Yeah.
Because if they're already going to have a single bye, no matter if they play a game or not, or if they're already going to be in the play-in, if they're already going to have a double bye, then they just won't play them. But if it matters, then I would say that then they'll have a problem.
That's kind of what they were talking about with the NFL too, with the Bills Bengals game. Whenever that happened, just is this going to affect the bye? And it did, but they have the neutral site.
But you can't do that in a tournament when you have
when it's already a neutral site. That being said,
and when it affects other teams' seeding, it's a problem.
Hopefully those games get rescheduled and it doesn't lead to injuries and whatnot for any of those 3 teams. Moving along. We'll move along here. Headline number 3, we have the recent skid that the Ohio State Buckeyes have been on. It has been just a rough stretch for Ohio
Chris Holtman
State.
has a problem in Columbus right now. Ohio State looked to be the number 2 team, I would say, maybe in the Big Ten, just behind Purdue.
I thought after that, coming off that Purdue loss, which started this 5-game skid, I made a tweet on our account. I was like, these 2 teams are for sure the 2 best teams in the conference. And since then, it hasn't been pretty.
Yeah, and I'll say part of the reason was Key was hurt. Understandable. He puts in a large portion of production there, but not enough to where they can't overcome it. And he's back now, and they're still losing. So
exactly.
I don't know what it's must be a team thing. Maybe they need to have a players meeting or something because something just isn't clicking. This last, what has that been? 5 games, so 2 weeks.
Since January 5th, it was a Thursday, so 2 weeks in a day now.
2 weeks is. I mean, if it was back-to-back games or 3 games and it was just a week and you got back to the winning side of things, it'd be different. But 2 weeks, both home and away losses, and one of your losses is to the worst team in the Big Ten.
The 2 of them, they lost to Nebraska as well. The 2 worst teams in the Big Ten have both beat them in the last week.
Minnesota hadn't won a single Big Ten game until they beat you on your home floor. I would start asking questions quickly and figure out what the problem is and get it figured out if I was Chris Holtman.
Coming from an Illinois vantage point, we had our little skid as well up until we had our win streak, and then obviously we'll get into the game that was played on Thursday against Indiana. But it took, I don't know what it was, but there was a switch that was flipped with the which was the first game of the win streak, the Wisconsin game, beating Wisconsin at home without Tyler Wall. They just need a spark desperately, and their next opponent is Iowa, which if you take a look at their schedule, it doesn't get easier. They've got Iowa, then they come to Champaign, then they go to Assembly Hall in Bloomington, and then Wisconsin. Those are their next 4. So I think even if they turn it all the way around, they're at most probably going to win 3, probably looking at 1 or 2, if that.
If they don't win that Iowa game, I think they might struggle until they get
a rematch with Northwestern.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Northwestern game in early February is maybe their next best chance at winning a game,
I mean,
which is
and again,
what
it's
is
the
that,
Big
5 games
Ten.
from now? That's 10
Yeah,
losses. That's
it's the Big Ten,
ooh,
and anyone can win on any given night. And home court
yeah.
is obviously so important in the conference. Um, so they're going to have opportunities, and this team is talented. One thing that I'm seeing here is that Bryce Sensabaugh has led the team in scoring for the last 9 games, which, if you take a look at the first however many games they've played, 18. So the first 9, you were seeing, I don't think they didn't have a single back-to-back leading scorer. You have Justice Suing, Zed Key, Sensabaugh, Sean McNeil is on there. They had different leading scorers every game, and then the last 9 games, it's all been Bryce Sensabaugh. Now, it's great that Bryce Sensabaugh is stepping into a leading role as a freshman on that team. He's a stud. I've watched him play several games. He's great, but it seems like it seems important that there are other guys contributing as well, and maybe they try to go back to a not a more team oriented style, but just spreading the ball around, taking more shots in rhythm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, looking at it here, they've got the last 5 games. He's also leading the team in
And
rebounds,
rebounding, exactly.
which means he's just a one-man show, and it's hard to win a game 1-on-5, and it's even harder to do it in the Big Ten.
It's just that
If you're not
they
getting any production out of anybody else, you're going to struggle in the Big Ten.
the Purdue loss, I'll accept that was a good game. I think even at that game, I think they got better from that game. And then you lose at Maryland, which Maryland's a good team, and at their place, they're pretty good. But then it was the all access game on Fox or FS1 against Minnesota.
Which,
And
can we take a pause? That is one of the greatest ideas that
I
has
love
ever
that.
been put on television.
I do not need the
I don't need
I don't need Ben Johnson.
BK,
No,
have it your
exactly.
way the entire time. Okay, give me the coaches in the huddle. I want to see what their game plan is.
The huddle was easily the best part of that. I don't need to hear Ben Johnson and Holtman yelling during the game. I'm more than okay with whoever's announcing the game, but whenever they don't go to commercial and they keep you in the huddle and you get to watch Ben Johnson inspire and Chris Holtman draw plays up, I thoroughly enjoyed that segment. That was awesome.
Yes, that is one of the greatest ideas, and I don't know if they got a sponsor for that paid for so they didn't have to put ads on or commercials, but I tell you
As a
what,
junkie,
if more of that could happen, it would make things so much more enjoyable. It would grow the sport. I think everything. It's great.
it's a great gimmick. I don't need to see it super often, but 2 or 3 games a
If
year.
if every
I
team got that 3 times a year, it would be perfect. I think.
You think every team? I just
In
need
the
to
big,
see.
I mean, I'm saying for not every team, obviously, because it was only on FS1, right?
I think so. If
Yeah. So I mean, if
Fox, I know
if the
that
big
Fox
name
has the
teams
TV.
get
Go
three
ahead.
times a year,
I think Fox has the TV rights to the Big Ten, the Big East, and the Pac-12. I believe are the 3 that show up on Fox. If each conference got like one semi-important game and one not very important game for the entire conference schedule, that's all I need. I don't, and they flip who has it each year, so that way, because I know that teams like we played Minnesota immediately, like we were their next game. I'm sure that there were guys on staff that are picking out play calls from Ben Johnson, and
probably.
that's something that you really don't. And I think that may have had something to do with Ohio State choosing to do it because they were playing Minnesota, but still, I mean, you see how it went. So
Yeah,
just
I think maybe okay. I see what you're saying. That's a good point I didn't consider. Is they're going to get play calls from it. I say maybe you push that to the back end of the season. Then you do in late February, early March, right before the Big Ten tournament. You pick the key games that are going to change seeds or get a team in or get a team out and do it for because those games too are going to have the highest ratings anyways. So I think if you can do something like that, it would just only improve the
basketball
thought of
landscape.
those games. Yeah.
All over. It's cool. I enjoy it. It's a fun gimmick. That being said, back to Ohio State. Like I said, their next game against Iowa on Saturday, and they're going to need to bounce back here soon. We're going to get into this later. I still think, as of now, they're on the bubble and they're one of the last 4 in. I know you're on the fence as well.
I would disagree. I disagree, but we'll get into it later.
That's Michigan bias is what that is.
It's really not. It's objective bad basketball bias. Like they are playing bad basketball
Right now. Yes, I still think,
and I don't think they really have a marquee win to make up for the last 2 weeks. I mean,
they beat Rutgers at home and then they shoved against Northwestern at their place, but they have close losses to Duke, SDSU, and North Carolina,
and
who are all top 5 or not top 5. They're all top. They're probably top 25 teams in the country. They're close, if not better.
Duke is a little bit. Yeah, I don't know about the Duke game. Duke is overhyped, I think.
We'll see. It's an interesting dynamic with Ohio State, and I think that they're going to be fine if they can make their way back to 8-12 in conference play. I think that they're going to be more than okay in making the tournament, as long as they have a couple of key wins down the stretch. Moving along, we'll get more into Ohio State. Maybe we won't go too in depth because we gave a little breakdown here, but we'll talk about them a little bit later whenever we're breaking down the Big Ten tournament outlook. Final headline we have here before we get into that, though. The Illinois game last night. I was there. I was in the second row, and I got to witness with my very own eyes a Trace Jackson Davis masterclass. 35 points, 9 boards, 5 assists, 3 blocks, 15 of 19 from the field, 5 of 6 from the line. It was brutal.
I got a front row seat because it was on my computer watching it, and I didn't watch the first half. I turned it on halfway through the second half when I got a Twitter noti from Aunt Wright, and it was just a picture of the score, and it said TF as the caption, and I thought, oh boy, I better turn this on and see what the problem is. And I would say it's a typical Illinois game. If threes aren't falling, the offense stalls.
It wasn't
stalls.
Even offensively, it wasn't great, but offense was not the problem. I apologize. Indiana, they killed us inside. It was, I don't know what the final points in the paint marker was. I just know at some point it was like 48-22. It wasn't close. Everything that they wanted, they got. They shot over 60% from the field for like the 4th time in Big Ten history or something. Maybe it was the 4th time in Indiana history. I don't know what the stat was. Trace Jack, here's my outlook. I was sitting there watching it, waiting for the double teams to come. Mike Woodson broke this down in his press conference. He's like, we had a plan if the double team started to come. He was warning Trace that they were coming, and they never did. And that's how you let Trace Jackson Davis go for 35. And
yeah, so why did they not change anything? Do you know? Do you have any insight on Underwood's thought there that they didn't change for?
I didn't talk to Brad.
I didn't know if he gave a press conference or.
I didn't see the presser last night. My thought is, in the past, Trace has been a legit non-factor against Illinois because of Kofi. Kofi has shut him down, and we don't have Kofi this year. Danger was, I think, the best on him. We tried Coleman Hawkins, who has been our best defender this year, and Coleman just wasn't physical enough. Dane, he tried to hold his own, but he just isn't as strong defensively.
Not as quick either.
Yeah, exactly. Trace, he was a bad matchup. I was really hoping that we'd have some help there. The issue is that whenever we would bring help side as well, we tried this in the first half, which you didn't see, but we would have Danger on him, and Trace would be backing down from his elbow spot wherever he goes from the corner, and then Coleman would flash to show some help, and then he would just pass right over the top, layup for Jordan Geronimo. It happened over and over and over again. And then they're like, okay, we're going to leave him on the island. And then he would just score one-on-one. So it was just, I was not the biggest Trace Jackson Davis guy. I like his game, but I didn't love his game. I think
he's a bit overhyped.
I didn't fully understand, this guy's an All-American for a while. And I was proven wrong last night. I witnessed a masterclass.
2 things that stand out to me, looking at the stats from last night's game. You guys had the same number of made free throws at 9, but Illinois shot 10 more.
Horrible performance from the line. I don't know.
Under 40%.
I don't think
39.
I don't think we made both an apparel night. I think it was just every time we'd go hit one, miss one.
something else that stands out to me is Indiana shot 62% from the
On
floor.
the field. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It is hard to beat anybody when they shoot
And what
60%.
are you looking at the box score? How many threes did they shoot? 7,
They
8,
shot 9.
9 threes. And what did they shoot?
They made 3 of them.
3 and 9, so that's average. They just got to the paint whenever they wanted. Whenever they weren't toasting with TJD, they would run the pick and roll. And then we'd have danger and drop coverage, and Hood Shafino would just shoot a floater, and he made it every time. There were just no answers. We play them again in February. I'm hoping that there's an adjustment for that.
So what's the story with behind these technical fouls for that game? What happened there?
I'm not entirely sure.
It looks like each team had a tech.
There was a lot of talk with, I believe there was a couple. I think Shannon and Hood Shafino got into it quite a bit. I think Sincere Harris had a little bit to say. The tech on Indiana was on the bench. It was Xavier Johnson who got it.
Do you know what happened there?
I'm trying to remember.
Did he say something or step on the floor?
He said something to a ref. I feel like I don't know if it was a bad call or I don't know why he felt the need. It was either a bad call or bad no call, I'd imagine. Or I don't know. I don't think he was talking to any players. But yeah, it was interesting.
The only thing I can see here that is really a problem. I mean, you guys won the turnover battle easily. You guys only fouled 9 times compared to Indiana's 20.
That's what people from Indiana were complaining about, the foul discrepancy as they were winning by
20. Yeah.
And I was thinking, this is reflective of how this is happening. They were very physical. I think this is the most physical game I'd seen a team play against Illinois since, at least in person, the Arizona game last year. Arizona was very physical against us. They were shoving guys off lines to catch passes. They were very physical. Illinois wasn't. It was and so I think the foul discrepancy was valid. Like it was 2-10, I think, at one point in the half, and I was like, and this is reasonable. And we couldn't even capitalize on that because we were shooting 48% from the line or whatever.
39%.
39?
Yeah, 9 of 23 for 39%.
9 of 23. Oh yeah, a couple of them were in garbage time.
Yeah, but
the
9 of 23 for 39.
Zach Perrin from France, he is the future of Illinois basketball.
Can we ask something? This is the second guy you guys have just added to the roster in mid-season. How is that legal? How is that illegal? All the roster spots are taken at the beginning of the year. Only one guy has quit, and you're adding guys. You're adding guys across the board.
You're spreading false. This guy hasn't quit. He's taking a step away.
He's not on the team.
He's not currently sitting on the bench.
His roster spot is empty.
No, he still has the roster spot. He doesn't do that. Zach Perrin was signed before the season, and I don't know what the trouble was getting in, but he announced his commitment over the summer, and he was finally able to make it. Moretti, I believe is Nicolo. I know it's the first name. I think it's Moretti is the last name. I'd never heard of him until a couple of days ago, whenever I read a tweet from all these Illinois guys saying that we have a new Italian point guard. I know he's 6'3", and he weighs like $150. So he's not. Brad said he's not touching the floor this year. He's going to live in the weight room. I'm curious and I'm interested about all these guys, but
I don't know. Some kind of NCAA violation had to happen there. There's no way.
I'd like to give a shout out to assistant coach Jeff Alexander. I'm fairly certain he's the guy that's recruiting the European players. He's the international recruiter. So big time for him. Hopefully these guys pan out and maybe we can become the Europe of the Big Ten. That's where basketball is moving. All the 5 best players in the NBA are all Europeans. So
this is true. I can agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. We play Illinois' next game is on Tuesday. We play Ohio State. So one of the teams is going to get right. Or it'll be, awful basketball. I hope it's not. ILL.
It could be very awful basketball. It could be the best game of the season because both teams that's the game but they both turn it on and it's 90-95.
It's the Big Ten. Anything can happen. All right. That is enough of that. Let's move on. I'm going to break down. I like to perform bracketology in my free time. Pretty elementary data that I use, but I feel like it paints a pretty solid picture. So I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna rank.
You might think that, but we disagree on a couple of these.
Yeah, we're gonna. I've got a rankings here. I got the 14 Big Ten teams, all ranked here with their seed lines, and we're gonna give a little bit of discussion here, and then we'll move on to some predictions for the games this weekend. So we'll start out at 14. Fairly obvious. Minnesota is pretty far and away the worst team in the conference this year.
Not even close.
Anything to add?
It is just it's a long 30 games in Minneapolis for Ben Johnson. It is a long, and Jameson Battle. I mean, it is a long 30 games. What are they? Have they won 5? They're up to 5.
I think they're at like 7-10. I believe is their record.
It's going to be a long 20 games left in the Big Ten for them.
Let's see. They're 1-6 in conference, 7-10 overall.
Yeah, it's going to be a long. So what they've played 4 games in conference, it's going to be a long 14 more games for them. They might not win another one.
They're going to get I don't know where I was going with that. I expected not big things, but I was expecting this team to be all right. You know, Dawson Garcia, Jameson Battle, Talon Cooper. They have guys that are capable, and it's the Big Ten. They're just, you know, by a pretty wide margin the worst team in the conference. And I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see. I don't know. Go ahead if you have anything else, or we can move on.
No, I think that's it for Minnesota. There's not much to say. It's just rough there in Minneapolis.
I would give them virtually no chance of making the tournament. Like, it's going to take several miracles for them to win the conference tournament, and that's the only way they're getting in.
Unless they literally don't lose for the rest of the season.
If
they're 21-10, I think they can squeak in.
That's true. There's a lot of games left.
But,
all right. Number 13 is Nebraska. Pretty large jump from Nebraska to Minnesota. I was not expecting anything out of this Nebraska team, and they've surprised me. They're obviously not anything special, but what are they, 3-5 in the conference? Yeah, 3-5. That's ahead of Ohio State. So
yeah, Nebraska is one team that has surprised me. I thought they would be just as bad as they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, I think they're better than their record shows.
Even better.
They got hosed. They should have a win against the number 3 team in the country right now.
Well, yeah.
They got hosed by Big Ten refs against Purdue. And it was at home too. Like I was saying earlier, home teams can't even get the favorable whistle. It was horrible foul calls, turnover calls late in the game in the last 3 minutes of the Nebraska-Purdue game earlier this month. Or maybe that was the first game of the Big Ten, which they play in December, or was that this month?
I don't remember.
Either way, you know the game. It was. I mean, that changes the trajectory of the entire season if you beat the number 3 team in the country. They were number 1 at the time.
Yeah.
It's. They got hosed there. Their strength of record should be much better. Their stats should be much. They should have that win. That win should be for them.
Shout out to Freddie Hoiberg. He's doing a good job.
He's turning things around. I think he's got a good core. He can slide into the middle of the pack maybe.
Next year he can be a team that may push for a bubble spot. Again, I don't want to say it's impossible for Nebraska to win the conference title in the tournament, not the regular season, obviously. But yeah, again, that's probably the only way they're getting in. Number 12, we have the Michigan Wolverines. And
you can start with your analysis first, and then
I have Michigan. They're not extremely far off the bubble, but they're not on it. And there's a lot of Michigan games this year that have just left a lot to be desired, is how I'll state it. They have a lot of games against inferior opponents that they didn't look overly impressive against. Their wins haven't been anything special. They've played a lot of good games with solid teams as well. Like, they played close with Carolina and they played close with Virginia and Kentucky. But their wins in the conference, like, they stomped Maryland, and outside of that, like, Northwestern at home is fine. Northwestern at Penn State, or home against Penn State, like, all your wins are at home. And then there's the backbreaker, which is the home loss to Central Michigan, which is what I think is separating you from the bubble as of now. With that being said, outside of that, I think this team's a bubble team. And I think this team, for sure, out of these three that I've given that are not on the bubble, is the team that has the best chance to be playing in March, for sure.
I'll open with this team is going to make the tournament. You are so sorely mistaken, sir. This team is in already. As of now, they are in. They play single-digit game to Virginia. They play a single-digit game to Kentucky. They play a single-digit game to North Carolina. Single-digit game to Michigan State. I understand they haven't pulled any of those out, but they're playing single-digit games. That is, while still losses, not bad losses.
Then Central Michigan.
The one singular bad loss is Central Michigan.
Oh.
It was a break game where there is no fans in the stands. Central Michigan has all the reason to come in and beat us. All our guys are looking forward to go home and see their families for break, and they have to be in Ann Arbor 4 days after Christmas Day. Are you kidding me? And it's a 2-point loss at home. It's not like we got blown out.
I gotta check how bad Central Michigan is. Central Michigan is, so my metric, it essentially, it gives you like an estimated place based on a couple of metrics that are already out there, based on like just taking a guess at what you'd be ranked compared to the average team. And Central Michigan would be the 301st best team in the division.
Yes, I'm not saying that is a good loss at all. That is an awful, horrendous loss. Should have never happened. Nothing. But you can't, I don't know, so much weight is being put on one singular Central Michigan game. When Michigan has beaten teams that are in the tournament, according to you, Penn State, they've beaten Maryland, they've beaten Northwestern. All these teams are in
at home as well. If you guys have,
we got a bad 45 seconds, or we beat Iowa on the road. We had the rest of these guys you haven't played. We lose to 6 to Michigan State, who's in as a 9 at Breslin, which might be the hardest place to play in the conference. Sorry, Mackey. Breslin might be harder.
Indiana fans going to be livid that you didn't bring them up. You brought up Purdue instead.
Mackey, the rack.
I love it. The
Assembly
rack,
Hall, the
rack, magic in the rack.
Everything happens there. It's interesting, but everybody. I think there's a general consensus outside of Bloomington that Mackey might be the hardest place, but I have to say I think it might be Breslin.
Okay. Again, and here's what I'll say. That loss is what's taking you off the bubble, and you have a fairly easy schedule coming up to where you can be you might be 6-2 whenever you go and play Purdue, and that game could be for the lead in the Big Ten. That's fairly reasonable.
That's true. Yes, I can't agree there.
And so, if you guys beat Purdue, then I don't know. You guys lost to Maryland. My bad. 5-3. So it wouldn't be for first place, but still, if you could be 6-3 if it went over Purdue in the conference, that puts you in a very, very good place. And
we beat Purdue when they were number 1 last year. Yeah, number 1, number 2 or 3. It was after they'd already lost to Rutgers, but I think then they had reclimbed to number 1, and we beat them again on our home floor. I think playing them on our home floor, especially if they play Terrace Reed more, I think the two big combo between Terrace and Hunter can take on one big in Zach Edey. I think that'll be a good game.
Your schedule is extremely tough, starting with Super Bowl weekend. You get a home game against Indiana, and from there on out, you're facing.
It is a gauntlet for the last 2 weeks.
7 or 8 games against all really good tournament teams. Until
luckily,
then, outside of the Purdue game, they are all winnable.
Yes,
and
they are all easily.
Purdue might be winnable as well, but I don't want to say you're favored in whenever you're traveling to Penn State or Northwestern, but in a lot of these games, you're going to be favored. And again, if you can perform well in that home stretch of the season, you're in. But as of now, with the lack of quality wins and the bad loss, that's what's just for now. You don't have enough on the current. In my bracket is not a projection. It's as if the season ended today.
Ohio State has lost 5 in a row, and they're
none of them
still
were to
on.
Central Michigan.
I understand none of them are Central Michigan, but they have lost 5 games in a row.
They're
Michigan has
barely
lost
on.
no more than 2.
They're hanging on for dear life. Let's move on. We're talking a while about the Wolverines. Number 11, I've got Penn State. Penn State is in my first 4 out, which I really, really like this Penn State team. I think they're very good. And
I think
on
they're
a good
good,
day,
yeah.
On a good day, I think they're, maybe top 5 team in the conference. It's just they're so reliant upon the 3 ball that you just have to see which Penn State team you're going to play.
In my opinion, they're missing one key piece. They've got Funk, they've got Pickett. And Pickett is good. He wants to back you down if he's got a guy the same size. But if they've got a true big man, Penn State struggles.
That's the issue with Penn State.
They're missing that one guy. If they could get a big guy and then also have Pickett, he could do some more mid-range stuff rather than having to get all the way down into the post. And then both of those guys can kick to Funk. They'd be dangerous.
I love Jalen Pickett. I think he's a first-team All Big Ten guy. I think that's not wild to say. I think if you're looking at the guards, you have the 2 guys from Michigan State and him. I think those are the
early on before Funk came into his groove here for them. I tweeted out. I said these are the Penn State Pickets, like Nittany Pickets.
Nittany Pickets.
These are the Penn State Nittany Pickets because he was willing the entire team to wins early. I mean, even up until 2 weeks ago, he was willing them until Funk started playing well. So, yeah, it was something to watch him play in person, I'll say.
I love Seth Lundale.
And I think they're good enough to make the tournament. They just need a couple more wins, and they'll be in for sure.
They're a team, too, that's dangerous to play in the tournament as well.
Yes. If they get hot, if they get like a singular bye in the Big Ten tournament, they've only got to win, 4 games. If they get hot, and they get the right matchups, they can make it to the championship game in the Big Ten tournament, which just might be enough to get them in. They might not win it because they're gonna have to come up with somebody who's got a big at some point playing in the championship. But I think they could make it.
They're 39th in KenPom. So that's a check mark. That's a good thing. BPI has them at 51, which isn't great, and their strength of record is 53rd. So if there are a lot of teams in the conference that you're either, because they're playing a Big Ten schedule, their record isn't as good as it should be. And there are teams like Ohio State and Indiana, I'll say, and maybe even Rutgers. There are teams that are better than the record says. And then, there are teams like Michigan State and Wisconsin who have maybe overperformed based on what metrics would say. But, that comes down to coaching. That's Tom Izzo, great guard. So Penn State, I don't think that they are particularly good at either. I watch them play, they're good, not great. And on days they can be really good. And then the resume that they have laid out thus far has been good, not great. If either one of them can take a step into great, they're in. And there's no doubt about that. Moving on. Last 4 in. So this is number 10. So 10 teams from the Big Ten getting in. Number 10 is Ohio State. I have them as my number 46 team overall. They are an 11 seed. They would get a first 4 matchup with the Clemson Tigers, a little college football rivalry. But yeah, I think, again, this is as if the season ended today, so they wouldn't be great. But if they end up playing in a first 4 game, they are certainly a team that could make the Sweet 16 run that first 4 teams are known for.
I'll keep this short because I think I discussed a little bit earlier on my thoughts on Ohio State, but they are 2-5 in the conference, which is a atrocious start. Okay, awful. It's hard to recover from that. There's only they've played 7 games. There's 13 left.
Yeah,
they're not going to win all of them. They're going to finish with 10, 12 losses in the Big Ten. They're going to be under 500, I think. I don't think that's good enough to make it. They're 10-8 now. They don't really have a marquee win. I dislike them being in right now. I think maybe you could bump Penn State into that spot. But yeah, I don't like them being in right now. I'll keep it short.
I've just watching them play, that they are good enough to be in.
They have the pieces.
Their resume doesn't say it right now, but that they're good enough to be in.
They have the talent. They have the pieces. Chris Holtman's a good coach. They just haven't executed this year, and I think
they haven't executed in the last 2 weeks.
This is true. I think they're higher here than what they might be playing right now. If you had told me If you had told me 2 weeks ago they were in, I would say you were 100%
Yeah.
right. But now I think they're out.
I had them as maybe like a 5 seed, like, but even like before, like maybe the day after the Minnesota loss is whenever I'm like, okay, maybe this team's like an 8 or a 9, and then the Nebraska loss on the road is what's making me, this team's probably not it. But for now, I have them in as a fringe team. Another team in my last 4 in, another 11 seed is the Northwestern Wildcats. Chris Collins. This team is something. I have them playing in a first 4 game as well against Texas A&M, who is hot right now. But besides the point, Taylor, what are your thoughts on the Wildcats?
Northwestern guards you. They play defense. They are legit on the defense. Their struggling spot is on the other end of the floor. They brought in Lowry. First name slips me now. Assistant coach at SIU, played at SIU.
Chris Lowry. Yeah.
They brought him in this year. I would assume he is the guy who's running the defense there at Northwestern this year because there's been a dramatic change. They need to find some guy like him to come in for the offense, and they'll be really good. They have guys, they just can't execute. Boo Buie is amazing. Who's the big guy they have? Nicholson. Or Barron's he's what, a 4-year Big Ten starter. He's got the experience.
I believe so, yeah.
Nicholson plays well. They just need some execution there. And when Chase Audige can hit the 3, the team is different. When he's chucking air balls like he did against Michigan, I think he shot 3 air balls in that game and hit some other ugly shots. They struggled. So it needs consistency on the offensive end. The defense is there.
He's the Pickett of the Northwestern Wildcats. He is what drives the engine for that team. Because either way, he's chucking up 18 shots and he's not going to be particularly efficient. But if you catch him on a day where he's hot, he's going to score 20 or 24, and I think he leads the Big Ten in steals. I could be wrong. I know he did at one point. Ahead of guys like Caleb McConnell, who's a stud. Cam Spencer's great defensively. The Rutgers defense is crazy. This is another team similar to Penn State where, whenever they're good, they can beat anyone. And you just have to know what team you're getting.
When they're on, they're on. When they're off, they're off. And which one it is in the first 5-6 minutes of the game.
Could you imagine
how the rest of the game's going to go?
If this team had Pete Nance and Ryan Young?
They'd be legit, but
they would be top 6 seed potentially. Moving along, we're going to go a couple teams here on my last 4 buys. Number 8 in the conference, I've got Wisconsin. Number 41 overall. BPI has them at 58. Ken Pom has them at 67. But their strength of record is 30th in the country, and that's what's really driving them to this point. They were ranked last week. They're good when they're healthy. Without Wall, they struggled, which got them to slip out of being ranked. But if he's back, which he is now, and they decide that they were going to play like they did before he went out, I think they're dangerous. You better watch out for them. I think they're in easily. I just looked up who their first round matchup would be. They'd get St. Mary's as a 6.
I think that's easily winnable.
As an 11. I think St. Mary's is good. But yeah, I mean, this Wisconsin team, they're well coached. They win games that they probably shouldn't. It's a good group. That's really all I have to say. And
yes, I think they're in. I think they're in.
Yeah. As of now, I have them as an 11. Like I said, the metrics aren't huge fans of them.
They would need a collapse to fall out, I think.
But
they play well with Wall.
What they've put on paper has been great. They were Bobby Pettiford shucking up reverse oop off a rebound from beating Kansas in that tournament that they played in Atlantis. And that would be a huge marquee win for that team. That being said, this team, I think, especially now with Tyler Wall getting back and healthy, they're going to continue to rise, is what I'll say. Moving along, number 7, we have Maryland. The Terps are a 10 seed. They're in my last 4 buys. BPI and strength of record have them both ranked 39th in the country, and they're my number 39 overall team. Ken Pom has them at 42. Their first round matchup as a 10 seed would be against the, I believe, 1 loss currently Conference USA champions in Florida Atlantic, which that's a winnable game for sure.
I would think that's winnable for Maryland.
I like Florida Atlantic's team, but than they've put a lot on paper. But this Maryland team, again, so many Big Ten teams are like this. Whenever, Jameer Young is having a good day, Dante Scott is the driving force of that team. There are a lot of really good guys on this Maryland team. I watched them beat Illinois at their place at the beginning of December. This team's good, and they can be really good. You guys split with them. You just watched them play on Thursday. What are your thoughts?
I think they're one of those teams, like you said, it's like Penn State and Northwestern. You either get a really good game out of them or you get a questionable game out of them. And I think that is shown even just in the 2 games Michigan played against them. Maryland did not show up for the first game, got shellacked by 35. Maryland arguably didn't show up as their full potential, but still enough to be a bad night for Michigan last night. So I think they're playing well. They're good. I don't see them going super far in the tournament because eventually they're going to hit that bad game. I think they can probably win the first one, maybe the second one, depending on who that matchup is. That might be the extent, but I think they're in as of now.
I'd like to applaud Kevin Willard for the job he's done stepping in as the coach of that program. He's, 1 year turnaround. And at times I thought they were, maybe the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference. For now, they've kind of settled right there in the middle. But yeah, and here's what I'll say. Like, we're seeing all these teams are sprinkled. You're going to see pretty much from 4 to 11. Everyone's just right there. Like, a good win for Penn State could put them up in the top 7 very easily. It's just so middle heavy. Let's keep moving on to number 6. I've got Sparty, and I've noticed, like, I was looking at bracketology, I was looking at Lenardi and Jerry Palm and those guys. I'm a lot lower on Michigan State than most people. Again, I have them as a 9, number 36 overall. Strength of record is them at 27, and Ken Palm has them at 35. Their first round matchup as a 9 seed, they'd get an 8th seeded a Boise State team. Again, we're getting a lot of mid-majors here. I think that game's winnable. The Mountain West is, again, very strong this year, but Sparty's very, very capable of getting a win there. And then even if they won that one, oh my gosh, if they won that one, they'd get a game against Bama as a 1. So
that's bold of you to assume. I mean, have you forgotten quickly UMBC? I mean, come on.
Okay. Here's what I'll say. The 16 seed that Bama would get would be a winner of a first 4 matchup between Fairleigh Dickinson and the Cougars of SIU Edwardsville.
Oh, you got both SIUs in there, huh?
No, the Dogs are not in.
Oh, you have Drake in instead?
I've got Bradley for now.
Oh, Bradley. Okay.
My metric has Bradley as the top team in the conference.
Interesting. I don't know. I think SIU could pull it off, but that's neither here nor there for today. Michigan State is less of an extent, but still depends on what team you're getting, just like the rest of these teams we've had recently. That loss early to Gonzaga on the aircraft carrier now looks a little worse, considering Gonzaga just lost at home last night to Loyola Marymount.
Yeah, so be it. I was looking at it. Loyola Marymount they're not a bad West Coast Conference team. I mean, it's a 2-team league, but they're arguably 3 or 4.
Gonzaga, they have a loss at home against Northwestern. That was that early set of Big Ten games that plays in December. But then they turn around and beat 3 days later Penn State at Happy Valley. So, I mean, this team it's interesting. They beat Michigan by 6 at their place. And then when they played Wisconsin, was Wall still hurt at that time, or was he?
I believe so. When was that game played?
On the 10th. 10 days ago.
Yeah. Because he was hurt in the Illinois game, which they were around the same time.
Yeah. The Illinois game was on the 13th. So and Michigan State only won that game by 4. So I think they're good, especially when they play at home. That really helps them. Like I said, Breslin might be the hardest place to play in the conference. Please don't at me on Twitter for that. That might be a lukewarm take there. But I don't know. I don't see any marquee wins, but also, I mean, they haven't lost Alabama by 11 at Alabama earlier this season. Alabama's good. They could arguably be the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
Michigan State is good enough to make it. I don't know how they'll fare once they're in, but I think a 9 is good for them.
I think it all depends on those guards. Hogard and Walker, they're kind of the driving force. I like Joey Hauser as well. But I think those two, and obviously the health of Malik Hall is important. Michigan State is a team, and I kind of compared them to Ohio State early, but Ohio State's faltered, obviously. We keep digging at Ohio State. I feel so bad. They are very deep, and they don't have a guy. Now, I watched Tyson Walker go for a 30 ball against Purdue on Martin Luther King Day. But that being said, he isn't the dominant scorer every game. And so they're a good group. Like I said, this could be a team that gets bounced in the first round. This could be an Elite Eight team. It's hard to read. I like this team. I watched the game against Illinois that they played, and they were good. Obviously, the whole conference is good. Hogard is, I think, really the key. I really like AJ Hogard. If he can step into the role that Michigan State point guards have had in the past, where they're the driving force and they're what makes teams go to the next level, then this team's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Next on the list is Illinois, and I'll start with that just so that you can finish like we did for Michigan here. You have them at a 9, number 33 overall here. They 27 in the BPI and KenPom, 44 in the SOR, which is
that surprises me
a little
too,
off there.
If you think about the wins that Illinois has, they have probably the best wins in the conference, I'd argue.
They have some rough losses.
You've also got losses. So yeah, 44.
And I would this is maybe another soundbite clip unintentionally. Illinois fans are the most delusional fans on social media. You guys think that you are going to win the conference by 20 games every year. And it is impossible. And you want to be rivals with everybody, and nobody wants to be rivals with you. I just don't understand it, but and they think they're just so good. I mean, starting off the year, they beat EIU by 30. Oh man, we're set to win the conference. That was what I was told on Twitter and from fellow Illini faithful. We were set to win the conference. Then when you beat Texas, who has now plummeted.
No, they haven't. Texas is a 3 seed. Texas is a top 10 team.
I don't know about that either.
Texas is a top 10 team.
Okay, if you insist, but they have some questionable losses.
UCLA
they have some
is
questionable
a 1
losses
seed. UCLA is a 1 seed.
Since losing Chris Beard, they have some questionable losses. Illinois' conference skid and then getting shellacked in St. Louis against Mizzou. There are some struggles that I've seen in Illinois. I think 9 is probably high. I think they're in the tournament easy, but I'm thinking probably 11 is probably better.
That's wild. Who
have you beaten that has any relevance?
UCLA and Texas. Those are 2 top 10 teams.
Early games should not be weighted as much.
We just beat Wisconsin. They were ranked. We've
without Wall.
We beat Michigan State, who's very good. We have a lot of good wins. Illinois, to an extreme. We've said this a lot. They are the best team in the conference and the worst team in the conference.
They are the most talented team in the conference. They are not the best team in the conference by far.
I think if you catch Illinois on a good day and you catch Purdue on a good day, Illinois is winning that game. Personally.
And again, I will say Illini fans are the most delusional fan base in the entire world. There is no sports team anywhere, professional or amateur, that has more delusional fans than the Illini. And it is so infuriating. And it shouldn't really matter because you want to be rivals with everybody and nobody wants to be rivals with you, like I said earlier.
I have a rebuttal for that.
And you just talk
right now. Here's what I'm going to say. Illinois.
It's all talk.
Illinois for up until the mid-2000s was a prestigious basketball school. And then they had 15 years of complete irrelevance, right? And now we've stepped back into the relevant portal and everyone has forgotten about the rivalries. Illinois and Indiana was a rivalry. Illinois-Purdue is a rivalry. You guys
and Indiana and Purdue have focused on themselves and forgotten about you guys. They've looked at each other and said, we're going to be the marquee rival.
we're the new kid on the block, right? We have right. It's just a newer team of relevance. You can't dispute that we aren't rivals because we were and then we were bad. Now we're back. So again, Michigan we weren't rivals with. I think the Michigan rivalry stems from the fraudulent conference title that you won in 2020 whenever you got to play 3 less games.
We just play by the rules that are in front of us.
That's totally reasonable. That being said, it's a Mickey Mouse.
That team was good enough to win that conference if they
They
played the
were.
other 3 games.
Both teams were equally good. I think there's a decent shot they're both 16-4 and we're co-champions. So there's that. And that's Michigan fans they also tend to be very mouthy. So there's
we're the mouthy ones. We're the mouthy ones. Have you been on the Illini Twitter recently?
Have you been on
Holy
Michigan Twitter?
Cow. Michigan Twitter yells at each other. They don't yell at other people. They yell at Michigan State basketball and Ohio State football. That is it on Twitter. Otherwise, they're yelling at themselves. We're complaining because Illinois fans are tweeting at them in their mentions, and we're not even coming at them.
I've been a witness to completely unprovoked Scott Bell punching down on Illinois football. He sat there on Twitter and he just relentlessly picked on Brett Bielema and the program for absolutely
he should have stopped.
No reason.
Brett Bielema was a crybaby after that game. He deserved it.
It was a pick play. It was illegal. We're getting off track.
Oh my!
Back to Illinois' tournament resume. They were a 5 previously. The loss to Indiana at home by 20 points brings them down to a 9. They're a fringe 8-9. If they're a 9 seed, they're not a 9 seed that I want to play. I'll just say that. Their first round matchup.
They can make threes. That's what if they shoot 8 of 19 again, or if they shoot 12 of 19, they're a completely different team. And they've been hot and cold. They've never been warm. They've never been warm and stayed warm. They either make 15 out of 19 or they make 5 out of 19.
Again, and you don't know which team you're getting. So if you could get the good guys. Their first round match would be against Arkansas as an 8 seed, which is also that would be a huge game. Arkansas is also a team that's very similar. Arkansas would be a great 8 seed. And the winner of that one would get UCLA, Illinois with a potential rematch, trying to sweep. Moving along, 4 seed or number 4 overall is Iowa. I have them as an 8. They're number 30 overall, 25th in BPI, 31st in KenPom, 42nd best resume. My thoughts on Iowa. Again, you can say what you want about Eastern Illinois, Taylor, but they beat Iowa in Carver Hawkeye. Okay?
This is what I was waiting to come when I knew the moment I said the Eastern Illinois statement. This was coming up.
That being said, the difference between the Eastern Illinois loss and the Central Michigan loss is Iowa, what they've done since has been a little bit better. And it's nothing against what Michigan has done. It's just Iowa has had better opportunities presented to them. And so they currently have more quality wins up to this point. They're on a 4-game win streak.
Since the EIU game? Go ahead, finish.
They're on a 14. They're on a 4-game win streak with wins against Indiana at home, in the RAC, Michigan in overtime, and then Maryland, which is 3 tournament teams and a potential 4th.
Since the EIU game, they've played 3 road games and 3 home games. They have lost 2 of the road games to Nebraska and Penn State, both of which they should have beaten.
Is forgivable. Nebraska really isn't.
The one win they have is Rutgers, which is decent for being at the RAC, but it's, anything can happen. And then they played Indiana, Michigan, Maryland at home, of which Michigan should have won if they didn't play bad for the last 45 seconds of regular time.
You also can't forget in non-conference, they have a win against Iowa State by 20, and Iowa State is up to a 2 seed now. They also have a win against Clemson, who is the current ACC leader. So
yeah, but any games before really the 20th of December are, in my opinion, weighted less because teams are still figuring things out. They've only played 5-6 games. They don't know who's going to start. They don't know the right rotations. They've got they still don't have guys who are like fully in shape. I mean, I hate when people try to use games like, I don't know, like the Iowa State game that was 1 month into the season. Okay. It's Iowa State and Iowa are two different teams from there, from them. They just go,
That's
you can
fair,
get so
but
much better over the season.
you can't take it off the resume. And
It's not off. I'm
the
not saying
point-
off. I'm
the
just saying it should
point-
be
yeah.
weighted less.
The point of non-conference is so that you can judge how good certain conferences are against others. So that being said, like that win, that's drastically helping the Big Ten. It still carries a lot of importance. And they won by 20. You know, it was dominant. So I still think, and again, I was saying Iowa's 4 and Michigan's 12, but the difference between them is really, it's not marginal, but it's not drastic. You know what I'm saying? That's just that's just the nature of the Big Ten. There has to be someone that's fourth, and there has to be someone that's, 10, 11, 12. So there's that. Chris Murray's a stud. Rebraca and Sanford are stepping up. It's a good team. Brent McCaffrey, if he doesn't manage to mess it up, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Their first round matchup would be against West Virginia and Huggy Bear, and then the winner of that one would get to play the number 1 overall seed Cougs from Houston. Fun times await.
I don't know if you can call any of those two games fun, but
moving along, pretty big jump here up to number 3. I've got Rutgers. Rutgers is the last 5 seed as the number 20 overall team, 15 in BPI, 18 in KenPom, 37 strength of record. Their first round matchup as a 5 seed would be against the 12th seeded Sam Houston State Bearcats with a K, winners of the WAC. Thoughts on Rutgers, Taylor?
Rutgers is really good. They play defense. They'll get in your face. They'll be physical. They'll give you everything you want on any given night. Additionally, they play really, really, really good at the rack. They are insane.
Always have.
It is nearly impossible to go into the rack and win a game. They've lost 3 home games this year, and it's one was by 2 points. I mean, one was by 6, and one was by 9.
Iowa game. Yeah.
One was by 9 when Iowa played pretty darn well.
Best they put all season.
Yeah. But looking past home, I mean, when they play on the road, they beat Purdue, the number 1 team at the time, on the road, which is a feat in itself because playing at Mackey is tough. Playing at Mackey
tougher than Breslin, Taylor?
Well, not the rehash, but I think Breslin might be better or a better home environment than Mackey. But keep that on the low. Yeah. They have where was I going with that? They played in Mackey, which is hard, especially when Purdue is the number 1 team in the country.
They had their number whenever they're number 1 in the country in Mackey Arena, though.
That is true, though.
And at the RAC, I guess, last year.
Rutgers is the giant killer when Purdue is the giant in the Big Ten schedule. They've had their number 2 years in a row topped the number 1 team. As for this year, I think the scoring is really semi-concerning. Some games they play in the 60s, some games they play in the 90s, some games they play, they're all around. But overall, as a whole team, I wouldn't want to play them because their defense is stifling and you just can't run an offense.
Caleb McConnell is my favorite player in the conference. I'll say that now. I love watching him play. Cam Spencer has been so important to that team as far as, offensive aspect. He's in the passing lanes. He's a guy, I think he's what's taken them from last year. They were a last 4 in. This year, he's leading them up to a really good 5 seed. They're a team that, again, I wouldn't want to play in March. You can say about the whole Big Ten, but every year seem to get proven wrong. Let's move along here. We're almost finished up here. Number 2, jumping all the way up to number 2 after last night is Indiana. Is an overreaction, Taylor, for me to have Indiana as a 5 seed and the 19th team overall?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Possibly. I think they have some questionable games Indiana has this year, but then again, so does the rest of the conference. So I think it's probably fair. I mean, they beat arguably the most talented team. They shellacked them last night
on the road
on the
without
road
two of their three best players.
without Race
Xavier
Thompson
Johnson.
and Xavier Johnson. Yeah. It
That's-
was just a Trace Jackson Davis one-man show, which normally is hard to do, but when you put up 35, it makes it a little easier. Indiana has some concerning losses, like the Northwestern one at home, losing to Iowa, getting blown out by Kansas, and then the rest of the games are kind of early. They got smoked by Rutgers in the early version of the Big Ten schedule that they play there in December, but that was at the RAC. And like I said, early games. I mean, it was December 3rd. Any game before December 15th, 20th, like I said earlier, really shouldn't be weighted heavily. Guys are still figuring things out. They're figuring out the rotations. But I think Indiana is scary, and especially scary when they get back Race Thompson and Xavier Johnson.
Yep, absolutely.
They could win the conference and the conference tournament.
Preseason favorites, and once they get healthy, they showed last night they're good enough to do it.
They could win the conference tournament, and end up as a 3 seed and make the Elite Eight.
They're 5 seed right now. Their 12 seed matchup would be MAC winners Kent State, and Kent State's been really good. But
Kent State's been good, but do they have anybody to stop TJD?
I don't believe so. I don't know. There aren't a ton of guys on this planet that are capable of doing that. This Indiana team, like I said, obviously, they're really good when they're good, and they're okay when they're not. And I'm glad.
They're beatable when they play not very good. When they play good, you can't beat them.
I don't want to say that I'm glad to see that they're turning a corner because they did it on my guys, but it's good to see that they're turning a corner. And hopefully they continue to rise here. They can give Purdue a challenge at the top, and then maybe get us because they're the second best team and they're a 5. If we can get a 3rd seed, that would be massive. And then going to guess who the number 1 team is. Purdue is my number 3 team overall, which some might say is low. I've got Houston, Bama at 2. My metric seems to be a little shoddy at the top, but I still think for now they're doing a fairly accurate job. The Purdue 16 seed matchup would be NC Central out of the MEAC.
The MEAC that you were dogging earlier, huh?
Yeah, they're getting a 16 seed. Norfolk State couldn't get it done this year. Well, they might. For now, I've got NC Central coming out of that conference. 7-1 in conference for Purdue. Obviously, everyone knows how good Purdue is. There isn't much to talk about.
There's not much to talk about. They just have that loss to Rutgers. That's the only one of the year. So, I mean, there's not much there you can shake a stick at, really. And the schedule arguably is not hard the rest of the way. They've got Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Indiana, Iowa, Northwestern, OSU, Wisconsin, and I think those are all the teams that they haven't played yet, but they still got to play. Although they played a couple of those already, but I didn't see them on. I think they can easily beat all of them. The one that they're going to need to look at is getting Wisconsin on the road would be tough. They get Michigan State at home, Penn State at home. Indiana on the road be tough, especially if Trace Jackson Davis plays like that and if they get some guys back. But the rest of those games, I think they'll win. I think at most they'll have 3 losses, and that's even pushing it. I think they're certified 1 seed.
At worst, they're a 2. If the wheels fall off, the way college basketball is this year, the top 5 teams, I think by a fairly wide margin, you've got Houston, Bama, Purdue, UCLA, and Kansas. I think you could say those are the top 5. By a pretty wide margin. Then you're looking at Tennessee, Texas, Iowa State, Gonzaga's in there, Connecticut. I know they're on a skid right now, and Virginia, and Gonzaga. Yeah, I'd said all those teams. But yeah, I think last year at this time they were the prohibitive favorites. I don't know at this point if they weren't number 1 at this point in the season, but they're still probably top 5. They finished as a 3 seed, so I don't see the wheels falling off like that. I don't think that the Big Ten is as strong towards the top, obviously, to where they're going to be particularly challenged. And so I think it's going to be tough for them they're definitely not going to be a 3, I'd say. I think they're a lock for at least a 2, regardless of how the season ends.
I can't disagree on any of those. I think they're they're a good team. We just need to see them prove it in March now.
Yep. All right. That maybe took a little bit longer than I thought, but we are going to move on to our last phase here. We've got the weekend predictions. There were supposed to be 6 games this weekend. Now there's only 5 with the Wisconsin and Northwestern postponement. So the first game that will be happening on Saturday, Iowa travels to Value City Arena in Columbus to take on the Buckeyes at 1 Central, and that game will be on Fox. Taylor, what are you looking for in that game?
I'm looking for Ohio State to have some semblance of returning to their identity before 2 weeks ago. I think that goes without saying. I'm looking for Iowa to go play a big road game. I mean, winning that game there moves Iowa up to 5-3 in the conference and puts them in pretty good position to go make a run at a double bye come March. Ohio State needs to show up, and if they show up, I think they'll win. If they show up, I think they'll win. But if they don't, and I like Iowa if they don't. But if we've got to make a pick here, I think Ohio State can turn around. I don't think they'll lose 6 in a row. I'll go with the Buckeyes.
Okay. One thing I'm particularly looking forward to, it's not necessarily the matchups, but the caliber of player seems to be similar. I think Chris Murray is a step ahead of Bryce Sensabaugh, but they're clearing away forwards and they're the best teams on their team, the best players on their team. Philip Rabasha, oh my gosh, Philip Rabasha and Zed Key gonna duke it out down low, and then you got Stanford and Suing. I feel like these teams are fairly equally matched. Someone is gonna have to be an X factor in this game. Probably it could be one of those 6. It could be someone else. And where's it at? It's in Ohio State.
Yeah,
I like that pick too. I think Ohio State gets back on the right track, gets their 3rd win in the conference. As much as I like this Iowa team, it's Ohio State's kind of in desperation mode now, and I think that's going to be reflective on Saturday. And then running simultaneously with that game on Big Ten Network, starting 15 minutes later, Nebraska travels to Happy Valley to take on the Nittany Lions.
I don't know that Nebraska has anybody to stop Pickett necessarily.
I think that this is an interesting matchup because they have Sam Griesel as their guard. He's 6'7", he's big. I think he's a guy that Pickett is going to have to play a more traditional game against in order to win. And I think Penn State's the better team. They're at home. They have the shooters. But it's going to be interesting to see if Pickett, changes his play style a little bit.
I think Nebraska's best 3-point shooter might be Tominaga.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, he comes off the bench.
If him and Funk can go shot for shot, Nebraska has a chance.
If they have a little 2-minute stretch where they're going back and forth and they each hit 2 in a row or something and the place is going back and forth and it's wild, that would make for must-see TV at one of the games between some of the bottom half teams in the conference. I think this game, I've seen both these teams play. This game could be more exciting than the Iowa-Ohio State game.
Yeah, Ohio State both play rather dry forms of basketball, and Penn State and Nebraska both try to spice it up a little bit. I think it will be the more interesting game, especially if they try to shoot the lights out.
That being said, if you're going to make me pick the game, I think it's Penn State for sure. I think.
I think Penn State is probably the better team there, and they're playing at home. I don't see them losing.
Again, they're a team that, if they're off, I think Nebraska could pull this upset. But if I would say probably 75-ish% chance that we're going to see Penn State walk out of there and maybe creep their way back up to the last 4 ends. So that's it for the Saturday slate. Moving on to Sunday, 11 a.m. Central Time on the Big Ten Network. Minnesota travels to Ann Arbor. Are you going to be there?
I'll be at this game, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for a couple things in this game. Minnesota is not very good, so I would like to see us experiment with some things that I would like to see, which would be Terrace Reed playing more, either in conjunction with Hunter with a Twin Tower lineup, or in place of Hunter. I don't know that he needs to. I don't know that Terrace Reed needs to start yet, but he definitely has earned some playing time. Additionally, I'd like to see Will Cheddar come into the game, start for Terrence Williams. because while he played decent in the Maryland game, he's played bad for the 5, 6, 7, 8, hell, any of them games before that. And I think Cheddar just brings a different spark to the floor. And I think Minnesota is the perfect game to do that because they've only won one Big Ten game and just aren't really that good.
I appreciate that. My AirPods just died. I had no idea what you said, but I'm sure it was very insightful. I'm sorry for my mic quality being maybe a little rough. And I'm assuming you picked Michigan to win.
Yes, I'll take Michigan easy.
I'm with you there as well. We're so great minds, Taylor. We're thinking alike right now. Running simultaneously, game of the weekend is going to be on CBS. Michigan State at Assembly Hall against the Hoosiers. Can the Hoosiers stay on track and get another big win? Can Michigan State get another big win after beating Rutgers?
I will go ahead and say this, so that way maybe my mentions aren't completely full. It is tough to win at Assembly Hall. That is something Michigan State is going to have to overcome.
Everywhere in the Big Ten, it's hard to win on the road. Underline, bold, italicized, exclamation points.
Put stars in front of it, everything.
Highlight. Go ahead.
Do you know when these guys are getting back for Indiana?
I have no idea.
Is there a timeline on that?
I know Xavier was in a boot. I don't know what the issue what race's timeline is. That's one thing I hate about college basketball is that the timelines aren't nearly as transparent. Like in the NFL, this is the injury, he's going to be out 2 to 6 weeks. I feel like I just have to wait and see on 2 hours before the game starts whether you're playing against Race Thompson or not.
With that being said, if Trace Jackson Davis decides to drop 35 and 12 or whatever he dropped at Illinois, Michigan State has no chance.
2 things I'll say here. I'm going to jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Madi Sissoko and Joey Hauser are going to be physical, and that's something that TJD is going to have to deal with. Also, Tom Izzo he's going to have this schemed up. I think I like what Michigan State can do to stop TJD. Now, can Hood-Schifino step up? Can Tamar Bates or Trey Galloway or Miller Kopp maybe hit a couple threes? That's going to be the factor in this one, I think. Continue.
Yes, with what you said and what I said, I might go against Indiana here. I think Michigan State can do it.
It's in Assembly Hall. Michigan State on the road is tough. I don't know what the line's going to be. I'd like Michigan State to cover.
I'd like Michigan State at least to cover, but I think they could even win it outright. I think it's a lot of Trace Jackson Davis, and if he can put up a game like he did last night, they've got a shot. But he doesn't do that on the regular. And I think that's something that has been a problem for them, especially with their other star guys out. So I'm going to take Michigan State to win this game. You might not, but I'm going to take Michigan State on the road.
This is a tough one for me to pick outright. I just watched Indiana play. I'm a statistics major. I think we're due for some regression towards the mean. It's a phrase you're going to hear me say a lot on this podcast. I think Indiana's
I meant to bring this up whenever we were talking about Illinois. Is that what you would call that last night? Would you call that regression towards the mean, or was that just a bad game?
Yes, both. Obviously I don't want to say it was out of character, but for how we played in the last 2 weeks, that was out of character. But yeah, I'm so sorry. Illinois is, they're capable, but yeah, I think both teams you're seeing. That's how the Big Ten is too when it's so middle heavy. Teams are going to beat up on each other at random, essentially. And you just have to be, you have to be smart about when you're picking teams. The lines are going to fluctuate based on how well the team's playing. And in reality, the team plays their average and, they're going to bounce back and forth. So I'll go Michigan State as well. I know they're hot. It's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be within 5. It'll be a 2-score game at the most. And then the final game starting at noon on Sunday on FS1, Maryland goes into Mackey to play Purdue. You think Maryland can make this a game?
Make it a game? Maybe. Do they have a shot? Absolutely not. this is the Boilermakers all the way. It's Maryland on the road, who haven't played very good on the road. They've been playing much better at home. Purdue only lost one game. It was to Rutgers by 1 point. And especially being at Mackey, I like Purdue, and not much more I'm going to say on this one.
I think Purdue's going to get Maryland's best game. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I think if they're going to have a second loss again, I don't think this is the team that's going to do it. That being said, this Maryland team is very good at times. Jameer Young, Dante Scott, as I mentioned earlier, they have the guys. I think this game might be close. But we just saw Purdue hold Minnesota to 39. That game was in the barn, right?
Yeah, that was
39 at
a home
home.
game for Minnesota. Yeah,
That is, that's special. So I got Purdue winning that game definitely outright. But maybe Maryland to cover. Maybe.
All right.
That's all we've got. Yeah.
I think that is a wrap on show number 1.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. Give us a follow on Twitter. We are at B1G Watchdog News. Also, some of these clips are going to be posted on TikTok. Same handle there. Give us a follow. Give us a subscribe on YouTube, or follow on any of these platforms that you're catching us on. Thank you guys. Look forward to this next week, Taylor.
Yes, I look forward to it as well.
We'll next week, we'll break down what we saw for the previous week. Maybe there will be some exciting headlines from this weekend. There definitely will be from the week. We'll get an update on the bracket, and we'll predict next weekend's games as well. What do you say?
Oh, alrighty.
Let's do it. Thank you guys. Once again, it's been real. Has it been fun, Taylor?
It's been real fun.
That's right. All right. See you guys.